I never took it personally. Even you know, things that were personal, like, oh, we're just going to cut you and your family off entirely, like, you know, where a week before everyone was family, and you know, but it's like you find out that your family as long as you are doing what you're told, and the first time you say no, and that was the thing. Like, as a drummer, we eat copious amounts of it. My thing wasn't, you know, trying to cause problems. I should have been able to do my job without going through some medical procedure that I did not need or want.
Did they change the lyrics to the song? Tully or somebody, Pete, give me something.
They did. They made a little video clip, and they changed you got to keep them separated, so you got to go get vaccinated.
That is not true.
I'm sorry.
The Try That in a Small Town podcast begins now.
From the Patriot Mobile Studios. We need like Jim doing that. This is Try That in a Small Town podcast, right?
Yeah.
Guys?
Yeah, you are. Is that a question?
No. It's a rhetorical question.
Oh, not a
Which is
word.
different than a regular question.
This is it. No big words.
You went right? Like, question mark?
Yeah, it's kind of like, right? The English kind of talk like
That's
that.
a northern thing. That's an Iowa thing, isn't it?
I don't know. Is
It's
it?
almost Canadian. Yeah, right? Do ya?
That's really not good.
What?
That accent is not good.
Are we rolling?
We are
Yeah,
definitely rolling.
Oh,
Sorry.
wow.
But you know what?
That's how they do
We're
it?
kind of keeping the Christmas spirit going.
Hey.
We've been loose for a while.
Yeah. Some call it loose, some call it drunk.
Yeah.
No,
We've been loose.
We're not drunk.
We're not drunk.
We're not drunk.
No, I'm
we're
just
not.
joking.
Happy
man.
New Year.
All
We're
our
not
listeners.
But either accusation is fair. So tonight, this is going to be a really good one tonight. We have Pete Parata coming on. He was a drummer in the Offspring for, you said it was 14 years. Was that right?
Most 7 to
about
21.
14 years.
He's got an incredible story. He was with them that long, and they let him go during COVID because he wouldn't get the vax.
Let them go in a cold way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
can't
a-
wait to
yeah.
figure this out. Like, I'm sure we all done a research, and it's like what I've read and what I've heard. It's pretty bad. And, you know,
Yeah.
Tully and I can attest. It's like you're on the road with somebody for that long. They just are your family. It's, you know, people say road family, but it's like you just become family. And to basically ghost him like that is, I can't even, unconscionable.
Yeah, yeah, and he'll go into it, but it's like he had a medical condition that kind of prevented him from getting that vaccine or something.
Yeah, it wasn't
Tragic
like an
could happen.
anti-vaxxer.
Wasn't like, hey, I don't want to get
Yeah.
this because
Yeah.
you know it's against my religion or anything like that. You know.
So yeah, I think he had. I can't pronounce the autoimmune disorder as something French sounding.
Yeah, it had three names.
Yeah, whatever it is a serious thing. From what I understand, it's like when he was a child and vaccinated, it caused some problems. Anyway, it's a real interesting story, and I can't wait to get to it. So let's do it. We've got Pete Parata here.
Yeah. Come on, Pete.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Pete,
Absolutely.
You know, we don't have. You're one of a few. Usually, we've known the guest or we have some kind of relationship. Pete, we just DM'd him and said, "Bro, come be on our podcast," and he was like, "Sure." You must trust us.
I assumed you guys, because you know a lot of rock guys, and I assumed y'all were all buds.
I did too.
Yeah,
Never met.
Yeah, we're never just meeting you guys the first time, but we're all very close. Like, we all live pretty similar
I
area.
think so, too.
So yeah.
Cool.
He's saying you look that cool.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Pete's got a really great and interesting story. And, you know, sometimes, I don't want to say we get lost, but part of the mission of this podcast started with our song, Try That in a Small Town. And I think we wanted to highlight people that kind of stood up in the face of adversity or took a stand for what they believe in, because that's not easy to do. I've heard Tully say that a lot, and it's true. It's not easy to do. Pete has a great story. We're going to get to that and part of that, but take us back just a little bit. Start us off. How did you get into playing? Like Tully could probably back this up. Most people that get musicians that start, you're inspired by going to see a concert. Like, that's how it happened for me. I saw Van Halen and I was like, bro, that's it. Tully, what was you?
The Police.
Police. And you saw that?
Yeah,
and
so I
it was
saw
like-
Sting, and I was like, oh. Never forget. He had this like white feathered sleeveless jacket on. I was like, okay, that's what I want. I want a jacket. No, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Synchronicity tour. I was a kid in
Oh,
Montreal.
yeah. That would've been epic.
Mold. So, but it was.
Yeah. So Pete, what was did you have a story like that?
Yeah, I mean, my growing up where I did in upstate New York was a very small town, like probably less than 1,000 people. And my dad was a music teacher at the next town over of like middle school, high school band. And so, I had 2 older brothers, and I watched them, pick their instrument when it was time, like 3rd grade or whatever. And my oldest brother played the clarinet, my middle brother played the saxophone, and I didn't want to learn all the fingerings. And I had already been like banging around and stuff. So I was like, oh, I'll just pull a fast one. I'll play drums, then it'll be easy. And then just kind of fell in love with it. Didn't realize like that was going to be what I would do,
Right.
with my life. And for me, like you said, seeing the Police, seeing Van Halen, I was in such a tiny town, if a band came to Rochester, cool, but you didn't get to see big bands very often where I was from. And so for me, I got dragged out to see a show from a high school band where my dad taught, and their drummer blew my mind. Like, he was a year older than me, and I don't know what it was with me. I would watch these bands on MTV, like I grew up on hair metal and Metallica and all that, and I was like, oh, I could never play like that. Like, I had some weird block being from a small town, right? And then I go, and here's this kid playing exactly like the people that I saw on TV, and it was like light bulb went off in my head, and it was like, all right, if he can do it, I can do it. And went home the next day and just started practicing and like got serious. And that was my focus from that day on. And it just like that one, going to see some high school band in a crappy little bar or something, it changed everything for me. And
You guys have like a first concert or something that
What
was
was
like
yours, Caleb?
life-changing?
Van Halen. It was still
Was it Van
Yeah, it was
Halen?
Van Halen.
You
Even
went
though
to-
that was my first.
Where'd you see 'em?
Even though they were in Chattanooga.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what year it was, but it was called the Roundhouse at the time. I don't know what it's called now.
Was it with Roth or? Please say yes.
It had to be.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't Sammy Hagar.
No.
Hey, I like Hagar, man.
No, he's fantastic. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
I was like 15.
I'm not dissing
I was 14,
Hagar.
15.
He's badass.
So.
Neil, what do you have a first concert?
Yeah, my first concert was Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Wow, let's go.
Yeah,
I like
taking
it.
care of business. Yep, in Birmingham at the Boutwell Auditorium.
Those are the songs I sang in the bar
Yeah,
bands.
but
back
I'll
in the
never
day.
forget it though. Walking in,
Yeah.
because my uncle had they have Thrasher Leasing Corporation, the bus company, and they were like the first ones that had Kiss out and ZZ Top and all that. But Bachman Turner Overdrive was on their buses, so we got to get in for free. And I'll never forget walking in, and the first thing I smelled is the first time I ever smelled pot. I mean, it was just a cloud, and I just thought that's what a rock concert smelled like. I thought that's what guitars smelled like, amps smelled like. I was like, oh, this is the smell of a rock concert.
Strangely drawn to it.
Yeah, so, that was my first one. So I was. That's
I love it. Okay, so Pete, you have passion for the drums. Obviously, what led you? I know you moved to LA. Is that right? And is that kind of how things started to get going for you?
Yeah, so the same drummer that I went to see that night, I go home the next day and I said to my dad, I'm like, do you have a kid in your band named Mick Palmisano? And he's like, oh yeah, he's a fantastic drummer. And I was like, how come you've never mentioned him to me? And my dad was a blunt person, and he was just like, well, Mick's very serious about drums, and you're kind of not. So why would I? And I was like, all right, fair enough. But ended up moving to LA with Mick. We got to be friends, and he had moved out because he was a year ahead of me. So he graduated high school, went to LA to Musicians Institute, did the first 6 months, and kind of came home for the summer. And then I had gotten accepted into the same school, so we drove back out together at the end of the summer.
So you're legit. You were legit at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that there was a wide range of proficiency at the school. It wasn't like you were Neil Peart to get in,
Right?
So, which was cool because it was like you had a whole different these guys would come in from Sweden and just party because Sweden would pay for them to go do school for a year and whatever. And they would just rage partying all the time and then come in and sight read their tests and just be shredding. And all of us are just like, oh my God, like, I'm in here playing 8 hours a day and you guys are like half wasted taking your exams. But it was a really great experience. Like I learned a ton in a very short amount of time and met a lot of great teachers there and made some lifelong friends. One of my first instructors there was a drummer named Ray Luzier who lives here now. So he plays drums for Korn. He played for David Lee Roth for over a decade. Oh, wow. Like he's one of the best rock drummers that there's ever been. But, at the time he had just graduated, started teaching because they were pumping up their rock classes. And so we got to be buddies. When I graduated, we ended up being roommates for 3 years. And so, you just kind of meet people like that and it spirals from there. So like once I graduated, then Ray would kick down gigs that he was too busy for to me to kind of get me started in LA and getting out and playing. And, from there, I just eventually fell into punk rock by accident. I grew up on heavy metal and I didn't know anything about punk rock, but there was a band, this rehearsal studio that I've been working at that was auditioning drummers and they were called Face to Face. And they were a pretty big punk rock band in Southern California. And I didn't think anything of it because I'm like, I don't play punk rock. And then a friend of mine was tour managing them and he called me like a week into the tour and he's like, these guys are auditioning drummers under your nose. What are you doing? And I'm like, well, I don't know punk rock. It's not my thing. And he's like, well, they're the guy they borrowed for this tour. They're not keeping him. They're coming back and doing another round of auditions. I put you on the list. And I was
What's the difference between just give people a real quick difference of like playing metal or punk rock? What would that difference be?
As I found out, there wasn't that much of a difference. I was unfamiliar with it because it just was never my thing. Where I grew up, we had top 40 radio, or if you were in the right part of town, you could pick up the rock station from Rochester an hour away, but there really wasn't a lot. And so MTV was a big deal because, that's where I was exposed to so many different artists. And especially in the early to mid 80s, they needed content. So if you had a band and you made a video, they were going to play it, right? So you saw all kinds of stuff, but you didn't really see any punk rock and stuff. So I just was never exposed to it. It wasn't my thing. But then so the band comes back off the road and puts their gear in their room, and I just snuck in and stole their live CD because I didn't have any money to go, buy anything. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just learn the whole live record to get a feel for what the band is. And then, for the next week, they were auditioning drummers all day long, and everybody had the same, the fast song and the slower song. And so I got to sit and listen to everybody else's auditions and kind of see where they were doing good and where they weren't. But by the time they got to me, they were pretty burnt out. And then they were like, oh, cool, the guy that scrubs the toilets and parks the cars wants to play like we we are scraping bottom. And so I was just kind of like, hey, you guys been playing the same songs all week. Do you want to play something different? And they kind of perked up like, oh,
you're
what do you
smart,
know?
Dude.
What? Right? And I said, I know your whole live record. And so one guitar player just launched into one of the songs and we just jumped in. And then they were excited and they had new energy, which gave me, a leg up. And it's just like, was an advantage that I was sitting there and I was the guy that worked there for sure, but why wouldn't you use that, to your advantage? So, got that gig and, just kind of spiraled from there. Like, from Face to Face, I started playing with a band called Saves the Day. And then we ended up in like one of the final bidding wars of LA before, Napster and everything, so we ended up on DreamWorks, with them. And from that, I just kind of, played with a lot of other bands, Alkaline Trio, worked with Rob Halford from Judas Priest on his solo record.
Awesome.
And ended up touring with Devo at one point, My Chemical Romance. So it's just kind of, when you start doing one thing, you meet somebody and, you guys know the drill. Yeah. Like it kind of spirals down to other opportunities. So
it's incredible.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, let's go to it then. So I assume soon after that, tell us how you got the Offspring gig.
And what year is this?
Yeah.
Like
Offspring, when I started playing with them in 2007.
Okay.
So
and the Offspring,
oh yeah.
For some people that don't know, like, I guess we're like old and there might be people that are listening that might not quite know who the Offspring is, but I don't even know how many records, but it's got to be 40, 50 million records.
Yeah, about 35 million, I think.
Okay, so
yeah.
Huge band.
Big hits.
How did that gig come about? Yeah, we'll go from there.
That gig, it was a funny story because I'd left my previous band, Saves the Day, because it just got to be where the drama outweighed the enjoyment of the music. And, and when I left that, I had been, at one point there was an overlap where I was playing in Face to Face and Saves the Day at the same time for 2 years. And so I never was home. I was always off the road, like I had no personal life, whatever. And so, when the Saves the Day thing fell apart, I was really burnt out on punk rock and everything. I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. And my wife's like, yeah, take a week off, calm down. Mm-hmm. And so I got called for this other band that was more of like a higher profile heavy metal thing. And I was like, oh, great, that sounds awesome. I'm going to do that. And my best friend is a guitar tech to the stars. Like he worked for Prince and Angus Young, Richie Sambora, everybody. That's like, he just knows everyone.
Awesome.
He heard what I was going to do, and he called up and he's like, absolutely not, you're not joining that band. He's like, I know this person in this camp and this and that. And he's like, you think your last band was crazy, like the singer from this band just married their therapist, you are not under those circumstances. And I was so like, well, fine, I don't want to play music anymore anyway. And then I get a call, and from first person comes at me and says, hey, Offspring's looking for a drummer, I gave him your name. And I was like, not interested, don't care. And, wow. punk rock, I don't want it. And then a couple weeks later came at me from a second person, was like, hey, Offspring's looking for a drummer. Your name keeps coming up. You should give him a call. And I was like, I don't want to. I'm not doing it. And then finally, a third person a couple weeks later calls up again. And it's like, hey, Offspring's still looking for a drummer. They can't find the right person. And so at this point, my wife was like, look, just... I'm tired of watching you mope around. Like, go get the job and then decide if you want it or not. And I was like, all right, I can't argue with that. So I went down. The first audition was just like a cattle call with their manager and a video camera, and everybody played 2 songs, a fast song and a slow song. And so I did that. And I was living in Northern California at the time. I wasn't in LA anymore. My wife was from Chico. And so I was flying down to do this audition, and I flew back up. And then I get a call like, hey, they saw your tape. They want you to come back next week, play the same 2 songs with the band. So I fly back down next week, meet the guys in the band, play the 2 songs. And I was like, all right, this feels interesting. It's all right. And then the next week they had me come back and play 4 more different songs this time. And then when I come down to there, I'm hearing other drummers in there. Some people are playing the first 2 songs. Some are on the second set of 4. So I'm like, oh, all right, these guys are really, taking this seriously, finding the right person. And I hear one drummer in there, and I was like, oh, wow, this guy's good. Like the slow song was solid, and I was like, oh damn, that's rad. And then he gets to the fast song, and I was like, not his thing, but still really good. And the door opens, and it's my old roommate Ray Luzier, and he looks at me and he goes, oh, of course you're here. And,
oh my god.
And and then he gets the Korn gig like a week later, which was funny. So
he's a badass.
He's insane. Yeah, he's so good. Go through the whole process, end up getting the job, and for a while, like I wasn't like a huge fan of the band or anything. It was, but as drummers and stuff, we're brought in. My job is to come into a situation and elevate the band to be better. And
you got to drive the bus.
That's it. Yeah, that's the thing. So it's like whatever the gig was, whether it was Face to Face or Saves the Day or Rob Halford or whoever, I come in. I'm supposed to make the band better, or I shouldn't be there, right? Yes. And so for me, it was like, all right, I can get along with everybody. I can play this music. It's no problem. It was very, very stick to the script. Like the person that got me, that I finally listened to and took the audition, she had called me when I was on my way to the airport to go down. She's like, hey, just a heads up, the singer of the band writes all the parts for all the songs. Like every piece of the music is very important. Like, don't go off the reservation, stick to the script, which was a great little tip to get going in there. So it's like, okay, cool. Don't, here's your script, you can do it. And, so for a lot of years that worked. I didn't plan on staying that long. I didn't, it was just kind of like, all right, well, let's get back on the horse. Let's play.
It was just a gig for you.
It was just a gig. But then, my wife and I had a second daughter. And so then it became more of like, okay, well, now we're in a different situation. So, I probably stayed there longer than I intended, but it was a great gig.
Like 14 years.
14 years. Yeah. And like I said, everything was great until it wasn't. And, that's the thing when you're brought into a band, especially a juggernaut like that, that has sold 35 million records. I didn't sell 35 million records.
Yeah.
They did. So, I'm there playing the drums.
But you played on what, 2 or 3 albums?
Yeah. Yeah. The last 2 albums that I was there for.
Right.
Yeah. And, but still it was not a creative endeavor. Right. It was very much, it was like being an actor. Here's your lines today. Play those lines. Okay, great. Which was fine. Again, I got paid really well to do it. And you deal with the ups and downs of any gig, any situation, especially as a drummer, we're the bottom of the ladder. We're used to.
I don't know,
man. I play bass. I might be one rung below you.
Fair enough. I'm not going to argue with the bass.
Yeah, because I would have thought it would be bass.
I'm just saying.
It's a guess.
Let me rephrase that.
Christmas Kalo's out.
Managers hate drummers.
Oh, yeah, that could be.
What's that about?
Yeah. Well, managers hate everyone. They'll find the one person in the band that they think is important and everyone else doesn't matter.
They find the cash,
come
the
after
cash
the
cow.
groove master
Yes,
first.
they've
Well,
got
I mean,
me-
everybody's replaceable is really the bottom
Managers
line.
don't understand a good drummer versus a bad drummer.
Right.
They have no musical background. They have no skills whatsoever.
That's right.
They're just there to rob people.
You're
and make
taking
money.
attention away from what's really important.
So, and like I said, for 14 years, everything was fine. And then, COVID hits, everyone's coming off the road.
Here we go.
Yeah. I
And
want to talk
then-
till it wasn't. Let's talk about till it wasn't.
So, 2020 comes and goes. Everyone's off the road. We were in South America when everything hit.
Okay, I was going to
and we
ask you
had
this because Tully and I remember whenever it was, March 2020, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, mid-March.
We were going, I forget, we were touring at that point, and where are we going? Wisconsin or something? That little run up there?
Yeah, I think we were in Wisconsin, right? When we were at the venue.
Yeah, I remember
that
my wife
morning
saying before we left for that week's run, country, we do it different than rock. It's like, we're weekend warriors, basically. But she was like, they're going to cancel those shows. I'm like, no, they're not. Well, I mean, we're programmed as musicians. I mean, we're playing.
We're playing the gig.
We're playing.
Oh yeah,
We're doing the gig, so
I've
we
played
went to
gigs
Wisconsin.
on my deathbed. You still, my knees buckling
and we'll
getting
get
on the
to that.
riser.
Yeah. Believe me, we do have to talk about that because I think people don't understand that. But we went to Wisconsin. We went out. We were working out. Actually, we were playing pickleball that day, and they come to us.
Very,
and they
very
go,
intense game,
pickleball. The old man sport. That's when we were getting ready for Mahomes and Kelsey, by the way.
We'll edit that out.
Yeah.
Headbands, wristbands.
Anyway, they come to us and say, show's canceled. And then the weekend's canceled. And then, the year's canceled. But so where were you when all that went
we were
down?
in South America. We had headed down we were supposed to be there about 2.5 weeks. And my wife is saying, she's like, you guys really going down there? Like, there's this thing happening.
Out
Like,
of the
no one
country.
knows what's going on. She's like, you're seriously going to go to South America? And I'm like, I don't have a say here.
Yeah.
It's not like I get to go, hey, fellas, I don't think this is a good idea. It's just like, I have zero power. I have as much power in that band now as I did when I was there. So, I'm like, well, they say it's going to happen. We're going to go. So we get down there, and the first show, wherever we were, I think Colombia canceled. And so we move on to Chile. And we get into Chile, and the show went on, and we're playing like this, hockey arena kind of thing. There's probably like 6,000 people there, all sweating all over each other. And we're all just kind of like, God, this feels wrong. But what can you do? Because you're in a game of chicken with promoters and stuff, right? It's like, if we cancel, then, everything's on you. Yep. So it was really kind of waiting it out. And we were supposed to, after that show, go to Brazil. And, we had like 3 or 4 shows there. And the Brazilian promoter was like, no, we're not canceling, keep coming. And but while we were on stage in Chile, they worked something out, and promoter was finally like, okay, yeah, we got to cancel. And then we took off and flew home from there. If we had gone to Brazil, they locked down so hard that we would have been stuck there for like.
Did you
a
guys
month
fly
or
back
two.
private, or was it
No,
commercial?
just commercial. We just got out and got home as fast as we could, and then
And then you were locked
hunkered
down, or then we were all locked down.
Right, yeah, because it was like, oh, we're gonna be off this month, but we're still going to Australia at the end of the next month. And
Well,
we're
dude,
like,
I remember this, right?
Yeah,
And-
we were on a plane when it got shut down.
Oh, you guys were?
Oh yeah, we landed at Dallas Fort Worth, coming back from Palm Springs, and when we got off the plane and walked in the airport, there was nobody in the airport. And it's one of the busiest airports in the
we were
world.
on that trip.
Yep, because we were coming back.
Okay.
and
weird.
it was like, oh my God, did the Lord come back? I mean, seriously, it was that empty.
Did he forgive me?
Yeah, I know. And we barely made it home before they shut down flights and stuff.
But I remember that it's interesting because, I was like, okay, that weekend shows got canceled. We'll go back the next weekend or next month, summer at the latest. And that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
We went obviously to full lockdown. So I guess where were you living at the time? Was it in LA?
No, here. Yeah, we've been in Franklin since 2011. So.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So thankfully we were here.
Give us the story of what happened then. So you obviously took, I assume, 2020 off?
Yeah, 2020 was just, we tried to do, I think I flew out to later in the summer when everybody lightened up a little bit. I flew out to like do some recording. And I think we did like a Christmas song, shot a video, like just trying to have
do something.
something to do for fans or for the band just to kind of keep some momentum. And we had been finishing a new record throughout the whole process. That was supposed to come out in 2020, of course, but then it gets pushed back. So 2020 was a wash, like really nothing happening there. And then, 2021 starts, and then we've got.
And everybody's starting to get their tours back going.
Right.
But with stipulations.
Right. Well, that's the problem. Like we've terrorized everyone to stay in their home and don't touch another human for a year.
Yeah.
But now we would all like them to come back out and buy tickets and T-shirts and clap for us. How do we unring the bell? So the powers that be, the Live Nation and the other promoters and whatever, come up with the concept of the fully vaccinated tour. Right, which is the vaccine's rolled out. It's a great savior to everything. Everything's going to be fine. Everyone has to get it, and then we can all go back to work. And for me, I have a history of bad reactions to vaccines, so I'm already not looking at this in a good way. I'm like, all right.
Did I read that you had an autoimmune disorder? Is that right?
Yeah, I finally got diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Okay.
And because every time, even when I was a kid, every time I would get vaccinated, I had major problems of temporary paralysis, limbs shutting down like that. And it's as I got older, thankfully I was always able to kind of turn it around with diet things and lifestyle changes and keep it, at least I knew what caused it. So then it was like, all right, well, I can't do this anymore because my doctor says hey, you're getting older. Every time this happens, it's taking longer to bounce back. Eventually, it's not going to bounce back. So for me, it was just a no go. And then watching, my wife and I watched the clinical trials really carefully, and the little information that they put out, we devoured it. And we found out pretty quickly they didn't have anyone with any autoimmune conditions in the trials. It was only perfectly healthy people. They didn't. So there's nobody like me in there getting this tested, and I was open to it. Like, this mRNA is a new technology. Maybe this will be different for me. I was actually like, okay, at least they're doing something new. Maybe that'll work. And while we waited for real world data, we just kind of kept our eye on things, and I tried to kind of kick the can down the road as far as I could. And, as the data started coming in, it was worse than we thought. Like, for somebody in my position, it was, one of the first things that was popping up was Guillain-Barré syndrome with people. And I was like, all right, well, this isn't an option for me. And, and we had she pulled a screen grab from the FDA website in January of 2021. I still have it somewhere. And, we sent it to all the smartest people that we knew. And basically it said, while we are hopeful that the COVID-19 vaccines will stop transmission, they were not tested for that. And we have no idea long-term how that's going to work. But here they are on television going, oh, it's 100% effective. It's going to change everything. And it's perfectly safe and effective. And I'm like, well, over here where you have to say you're saying it.
Where is
but
that, like on the CDC?
Yeah, it was on the FDA's website.
Okay.
It was not there long. But
Oh, really?
it was there.
They ended up
Yeah,
removing that?
Yeah, my wife took a screen grab of it, and we still have it.
Wow.
And I've shared it online before and had people go, "That's a fake screen grab you made." Like,
Good
who's
Lord.
got time in their day to make a fake FDA? Yeah. So
Well, and sorry, and while you and your wife were doing that research, were you passing any of that along to your buddies in the band or anybody like that, saying, "Hey,
Yes.
before we have to be told this, just I want to put this on your radar"? Were you already doing that?
yeah, everybody. It was kind of this unspoken thing of everybody knew that I was not going to be all right with this, but I think they were waiting to see what happened as much as I did. And once the Live Nation thing came down, and they were like, "Hey, everyone can get back on the road if we do this thing. Everyone's got to have their paperwork and stuff." And I just figured that we would have some hard conversations, but I'm talking to everybody that I can, anybody in other bands, people with, medical conditions like mine that were, getting medical exemptions from their doctor. I had a medical exemption from my doctor. It didn't matter. No one cared. It wasn't accepted, but we head into summer of 2021. We've got a tour coming up starting in the fall. And, I get a call from there, and I'd been going out to LA all year. Like, we were releasing an album, we were doing promotion, filming videos and whatever. And, everybody's there at the rehearsal or with a mask on.
I was going to say, what were the protocols during that? Because Tony and I remember it was massive protocols.
Yeah, because I'm coming from Tennessee where it was pretty laid back by early 21, right? Like, it was like, hey, live your life, make your choices. And you out there, and it was like a war zone. Like, nobody on the streets, people driving alone in their cars with a mask on. Yeah. It was.
You had to show a Vax card to get in anywhere, from what I remember.
It was getting to that point out there. Yeah. And so by summer, I thought we were going to have a pretty good discussion, because I talked to enough people in other bands that were like, "Oh yeah, we, so-and-so's got a medical exemption. It's fine. We're going out anyway. It doesn't matter." Like, so I'm like, okay, cool. There's a way to do this. And then I get a phone call from the band's manager out of nowhere that was just, like I said, I'm a drummer. I'm used to being treated less than stellar by managers. And
how long has this manager been with the band?
He was new with the band. He'd only been with them since COVID hit.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I didn't have a lot of history with this guy. And so, he chose to come at me like a flamethrower, and just I've gotten crappy phone calls before. This was the most abusive, threatening call I've ever had in my entire career. Like, it was.
I don't even understand.
What did he say?
He just basically laid it out in no uncertain terms. I tried to say, like, "Oh, I've got a medical exemption. I don't care about your medical exemption." Like, just yelling, like cutting me off. Like, it wasn't a conversation trying to tell me that, for the greater good, everyone's got to do this. And I'm just like, that's not a good enough reason for me. Like, you're not making an argument. You're just making threats and yelling at me. So it basically came down to, he made it clear that I was either to get vaccinated or I'd be replaced. And it was also floated out by one of the other guys about, hey, well, maybe we just get you some paperwork, something like that. Because there was people getting fake cards.
Did you think about that?
Believe me, I considered everything. It was nerve wracking, because it's like, not just like I might lose my job here, but I might be blacklisted from doing anything else ever.
Because
right?
That's a real thing.
Yeah, you were like, the worst thing you could have been called at that time was an anti-vaxxer, especially with
you
these
were
things
called a
rolling
murderer.
out. Oh yeah. Oh, I was called a Nazi.
Yes.
I'm just like a fascist. I'm like, I don't think you know what that word means. But
it's really insane to even talk about this right now. It sounds like a made up movie script, and that where you talk about the lockdowns, you talk about looking back at it now. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You think of stuff that happens in other countries, but
it's crazy.
It's happening.
Yeah, you would think. And, it got perspective a couple years later and stuff. But so at the time, it was just like, the phone call was so shocking. And so I wrote to the two guys in the band that were my boss, and I laid out the phone call and how I didn't appreciate it. And here's all the reasons why I don't want to do this and why I'm not able to do this. And it didn't matter. I tried to talk to them about him, and I said, I'm like, hey, you might fire me over this, but you should know this guy is not representing you well. And if he's treating me like this, he's treating your crew even worse.
Did you have a conversation, like a long phone call?
I tried. When I brought that up, I was told we're not going to speak to that. That's not the concern right now. He's not the concern. This, your refusal to do this is the concern. And so things deteriorated pretty rapidly after that. And, less than a week later, I found, it's like all communication stopped. And, I had a flight and a hotel and stuff on hold to go to rehearsal. And a week later, I checked my Southwest app, and that's how I found out I was replaced, because my flight was canceled. My hotel was gone.
And so they didn't even actually call you to say you were...
My access to the band calendar was revoked, everything just gone. And, it was brutal, because it wasn't just me. It was, it was my family. Our wives were friends. Our kids grew up together.
See, people don't realize that, right? I mean, obviously we can speak to this. We say our road family. In a way, it's actually your family, and your kids grow up together. Your wives are best friends. You become best friends with the people in the band, and to have them ghost you, I can't even imagine that. I'm thinking of the guys in our band. Tully does that to me. Bro, what happened?
Crazy.
Yeah,
it
was brutal. And even the process of when all this is happening in a matter of days, I was just a nervous wreck, and my kids had to watch me on the floor having a panic attack.
Oh man.
I'm just I don't know what we're going to do as a family. My wife raised our girls, homeschooled them all the way through. I'm the breadwinner. I'm the one here. And I'm holy,
it's really,
here we are.
Just so people know, in this business, that's really shitty to have 14 years in, and you do, which is a long time. And you play all these shows together, and you make music, and you go through all these, great times together. And then, to just get kind of ghosted. And then did they offer, any kind of severance or any kind of, no.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
That doesn't surprise me. That's
after 14 years, it was just are you going to do what we want? No. Moving on. For me, it was, I turned down the fake card because I'm look, I'm not going to lie about this. I'm not going to be and I know plenty of people that took fake cards, some really close friends of mine. I don't have any judgment how anybody navigated this situation. The whole world was put in an impossibly shitty situation. Yeah. There was no good way out of it. So whatever anybody had to do, good on them. But for me, I couldn't do it. I didn't want to put my kids into this position where they had to lie for me. I didn't want to put my wife there. And to me, it was well, if I don't think this is right. And if I'm taking a fake card, I'm going along with it. I'm part of the problem. And then I lose my voice. I can't say anything here. I can't speak about it. So, I wouldn't take the card. And, after everything happened, I didn't say anything for a month. I sat on it because I'm maybe they'll come around. Maybe something will change. Let's give it some time. This got heated. We'll let it cool down. And it didn't, and it's once I saw, news trickles back, and it's oh, so-and-so is, they brought this person in to replace you. I'm yeah, that makes sense. I figured that's who they would get. But so finally I was this isn't right. I'm going to put out a statement. I'm going to say my piece because, I know how, I was there long enough to know how they operate, and they weren't going to make any announcement. The same when they fired the original bass player, they made no announcement or anything. And because it was well, it's only a story if we make it one. Mm-hmm. So it's okay, well, I know how they're going to handle this. I'm not just going to whimper away and hide. I'm going to say something because it was bigger than the band or my job or anything. For me, it was my girls were doing musical theater at the time, and that community was brutal on mandating and forcing things and testing, and you got to have your cards and stuff. And so I was just all right, if to me at this point, when and you guys all have kids?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, when your kids get to be teenagers, they stop listening to you, right? But they're always watching, and they observe and they take in how you handle things.
That's a great point.
What they do. And so for me, I was all right, if the only audience I have with this statement is my 2 kids. That's it. That's my goal. Like, show them this is important enough that I'm going to set my career on fire over it. Like, this shouldn't be happening. Nobody should be put in this position. And, and that there's no opportunity or job or anything that's worth you giving up part of yourself and knowing, your own autonomy, knowing this is wrong. Like, I can't set an example to you that's okay to do. Cause I don't want them going through the world going, well, Dad caved on that thing, so I guess I can do this. Right. It was like, this is important enough that let's make that, make that point to them. And so, we wrote up a statement and put it out, and I didn't expect it to be a big deal because, again, I'm just the drummer from some band, who cares, right? But I think it hit a nerve with people because so many people felt like me. Like, we all, if you didn't go along with this, you were told you were the only one that felt that way. And, so I just kind of figured, well, maybe there's somebody else out there that needs to hear this as well. So we, put a statement out and made sure to point out, like, while me turning this down was my issue was medical related, no is a complete sentence. Nobody should have to do this if they don't want to. You don't need an excuse. You don't need it.
That's right.
And, and also to show a big part of the push for this was people saying, oh, well, we're so good. Everyone's got to get it for the people who medically can't. And, I was living proof that it didn't matter. Even if you had a medical exemption, it didn't count. It wasn't accepted. It was just like, no, we're just saying this, but, you need to get it too. And so it was really frustrating to be in that world. So we wanted to make a point of, everyone should have a choice here. There should be informed consent here. I don't feel that there is. And, I expected a firing squad. Like, I just figured, like, wow, I've already set my career on fire, and now, the internet's gonna either largely yawn and not care, or we're just gonna get hit with a flamethrower. And the crazy thing is we got a groundswell of support. Like, I started getting messages from people all around the world going, oh my God, thank you for saying something. I thought I was the only person that felt like this. I thought I was the only person who was alone. Or people saying, thank you for writing, something measured and clear like this that I can share with my family or my friends who don't understand why I don't want to do this. And, so it just kind of turned into this thing where I became a weird kind of lighthouse for people who didn't want to get on board with the narrative that was being pushed. And then I started getting messages from all kinds of people, like way bigger platforms than my little piddly platform, going, hey. And some people are like, how's it going for you? Because I'm thinking of saying something, but
how broke are you?
I want to know how bad it's going to be. And it's just like what I tell people is, like, when the cancel mob comes for you, it burns so hot and fast because they wake up every day going, all right, who are we mad at today?
No doubt.
Right? And I'm like, stand your ground. Don't apologize. Don't clarify. And that was the thing. I put my statement out and I clarified nothing. I said nothing else. I got out of the way because I did not expect it to take off. I didn't expect. And then we had, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News hounding me through emails. They had emails I haven't used in 10 years. They were calling my phone, my wife's phone. Like, these people were able to get at you so many different ways. And I was just like, I don't want to talk to anybody. That's not what this was for. Mostly, again, trying to just set an example for my kids, but also the point of the statement was, the band had a tour coming. They had a show in Nashville. I had people hitting me up for tickets to these shows that I know I'm not going to be at.
Right.
And I'm like, how many times do I want to have this long conversation about what happened? Can I just tell it once? And even with my family, like, my brother knew what was going on and my best friend knew what was going on. But the rest of my family did not. So when, they all unfortunately found out from my statement like everybody else, but it was like, well, this is the only way I can do it because I can't have this conversation 500 times. And I also have to say something because people are, wanting tickets and passes and, I'm not going to be around. So it was a really strange kind of time. And, I didn't want to talk to anybody. So we turned everything down, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, somebody at CNN's morning show was relentless, just kept bombarding me and my wife constantly. And it felt really, really strange. And it was just like, I didn't trust that anybody had my best interest at heart.
Well, they didn't.
Right.
Let's be honest.
I didn't,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, you stuck your head up. We're here to chop it off and make an example of you. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to allow that.
Yeah.
So I said what I said, and we stayed out of it. And then I had to, kind of start piecing my life back together. Cause now you're like, okay, well, what's next? Because like, does anybody need an unvaccinated drummer?
Well, it's like, but you brought up a good point, which I don't think people realize as well. Like, so you mentioned your daughters were in theater, So at that time, my son was on a show on NBC.
Oh wow!
And they said, well, basically he had to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And as a parent, you're sitting there saying, okay.
You're trying to navigate those waters.
We don't want to cost him, because if you're in SAG,
Yeah.
so you had to get vaccinated or you couldn't work. And we're saying, okay, well, it's his first season on this show. How do we do this? Like, do we cost him his job? And so he got the vaccine, and looking back on it, it's like, wow, what a position.
Yeah.
They put everybody in.
I know.
And you're talking about your kids, and it's like the same thing. It's like you're making decisions. Yeah, at that time he was 15, 16 at that point, So that's just crazy to think about the position that everybody was in, and you're having to choose, providing for your family.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, it feels weird to talk about it like this, because it feels like
it's really strange. Listen, this is we're opening Pandora's box here, and we're going to get to the backside of this. We do have to take a break. Hey, don't skip through this. Listen to a word from our sponsor. We're going to be right back with Pete Parata.
Original Brands is starting a new era in American domestic premium beer. Launched on July 4th, 2023, with the mission of promoting patriotism, unity, and the celebration of the adventurous American spirit, Original Glory American Pilsner is the first in the OG line. It's a crisp, refreshing domestic beer. We also introduced OG Light, under 90 calories and only 2 carbs. Join the movement at drinkoriginalbrands.com, because freedom is worth drinking to. Drinkoriginalbrands.com.
My name is Glenn Story. I'm the founder and CEO of Patriot Mobile. And then we have 4 principles. First Amendment, Second Amendment, right to life, military and first responders. If you have a place to go, put your money, you always want to put it with somebody that's like-minded. Of course. I think that's the beauty of Patriot Mobile. We're a conservative alternative.
Don't get fooled by other providers pretending to share your values or have the same coverage. Go to patriotmobile.com/smalltown to get a free month of service when you use the offer code SMALLTOWN or call 972-PATRIOT.
I want to be more like Pete. I wish I was more mild-mannered like Pete.
And that's a great way to come back on. I think what we're going to do sometimes, we need to compile our break moments, because there's always like a 5-minute where we say we're going to take a break and then we just kind of talk during that. We need to put that on a paywall.
Yeah,
because there's some good stuff there.
subscription only.
That's where all
Tim,
the good
get
stuff
on that.
happens, right?
Merry Christmas. Welcome to the paywall.
Yeah, exactly.
2025, starting January.
But you guys just blew my mind. Because I didn't know this. First of all, we were talking about how odd it is that a punk rock band, which in theory is supposed to be anti-establishment. Has to, you have to go with the man all of a sudden. Right. But tell me, they changed the lyrics to the song? Tully or somebody, Pete, give me something.
They did. They made a little video clip, and they changed you got to keep them separated, so you got to go get vaccinated.
That is not true.
I'm sorry.
It's true.
I'm sorry.
No, it's true. I read that, and it actually...
Was it like a jingle they did for a commercial, or
it was just something they
Gotta
tweeted
keep 'em
out or
vaccinated.
Facebook
Oh,
or
okay.
something. I don't know.
you got to get them vaccinated?
Yeah.
I wonder how they feel about that now. Surely they can't be proud of that still.
Yeah, that's the question. I'm like, everybody's got perspective. This all went down 3.5 years ago, right? Like, I have perspective on this, and I got to think at some point you look at that and you go, yeah, okay, we got that wrong, or
Yeah, we may have misread that situation.
But
Have they?
I don't know. I mean, no one's reached out to me. Like I said, my door is always open. Like I never took it personally. Even things that were personal, like, oh, we're just going to cut you and your family off entirely. Like, where a week before everyone was family, and but it's like you find out that your family, as long as you are doing what you're told, and the first time you say no, and that was the thing. Like, as a drummer, we eat copious amounts of shit.
Man, you gave them 14 years of bombastic brilliance.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I love that. Bombastic brilliance.
I'm telling you, well, he did. He gave them 14 years of it. and nothing? I mean, nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I like to say I ate every plate of shit I was served for 14 years. And the first one that I sent back to the kitchen, I was gone. Like, that was it. It was just like, are you going to do what we want or not? That's
here's the thing. It's the one thing that, if they've got a really strong feeling about this. It was a weird time. I give people a little bit of grace when it first happened because I was we were all freaked when it first happened. No one really knew.
We were all scared.
The point is, even if that's the stance they took, and you got the right to make your stance, it seems like the way you would do it is like them call you and say, "Man, we're really concerned about this. Mm-hmm. Is there a way around this? What can we do? Because we love you and love what you've done for us, but we're really passionate about this. You're passionate about it. How can we?"
I don't think it was ideological for them at all. Maybe for one of them who's very political online and was very on board with the narrative, and if you didn't believe that, you were probably crazy. And the other guy, I think it was really ultimately just boiled down to business. It was like they wanted to get back to work making money. I needed to get back to work. We'd all been off tour for well over a year at this point. Like, my thing wasn't, trying to cause problems. I should have been able to do my job without going through some medical procedure that I did not need or want. And that there wasn't even a real conversation or anything. It was just an unwillingness to look at opposite things, or even to understand how much of the stuff they were talking about was really going to be enforced. Like, once they got back on the road, they're playing festivals and stuff, and I got friends from other bands calling me up going, "Why are you not here? We're playing this festival with your old band. None of us are vaccinated. No one gives a shit." Like, no. And I'm like, I know that, and you know that, but it was like talking to a brick wall. You couldn't get through. It was just like, nope. This is, it has to be this, or we'll have to get somebody else. And, so I'd like to think 3 years later, maybe things have changed, but I don't. For me to stay creative and to stay sane, like, I don't follow anything the band does. Like, I just kind of move on. My wife will look in on it to make sure that we don't need to, correct something that somebody has said wrong and make a clarification. But a couple weeks ago, I got bombarded online. Everybody was sending me this clip. And one of them went on Bert Kreischer podcast. And Bert had asked them, what does it mean to be punk? And this was the guitar player, and he bold-faced answers, "Well, being punk means pushing back against authority. Like, if someone tells you you have to do this thing, you say, why should I have to do it?" And I'm like, my jaw's on the floor, because I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Language.
Like, when I said those things, I was called a lot of things, and none of them was punk.
No.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
Yeah. So I'm still just kind of like, all right, well, I guess if you're in the driver's seat of everything and you're in the position of power, you're not going to have self-reflection. You're going to find a way to justify why what you did was right at the time, and you don't have to feel bad about it, unless it's just a complete break from reality and he's rewritten history in his own mind.
Sounds like it.
Not here to speculate that, but.
Sorry, when I first was reading your story and everything, I was wondering if it was, I did think about the political angle, thinking, I wonder if they thought you're a conservative, anti-vaxxer and like, something like that. But then I also wonder if it was more simple than that, that manager, especially being new, and then the two band members, was it just they thought it's gonna be too much of a pain in the ass. We're gonna have to go through this, jump through this hoop just to bring him. Let's just get somebody else. Well, it might have been more simple. They're just lazy.
You mean like predetermined?
Like the manager just says, I don't want to deal with that. Wouldn't it be easier just to get another drummer?
Probably.
You know,
I mean,
I just wondered if that was the case.
I would imagine, like I said, I don't think it was personal. I think it was just business, but I think also they were probably confused because, you know, I'm in a, what do you call it? A backup position, a servant's position as the drummer of this band for all these years. You know, I complied with a lot of crap, you know, that I didn't enjoy or whatever, but you go along with it. So I think they just expected that trend would continue. And when they finally came up against something where it's like, hey, I physically can't do this, I'm not going to, I think they were confused as to like, why isn't he just doing what we want? Like this has been the routine. And
right.
And I just hate it. And and wouldn't expect you to comment on it, but it just, you know, from our experience, I just hate that you're on the road that long with your family and nobody got your back. That bothers me.
Yeah,
that really bothers me.
Well, and how many times, like these guys and you with the guys in your band after shows, were you not just, you know, rocking drinks and stuff? Said, brother, so we die, man. We're family back. Isn't this great? Said we're brothers. And there's all of a sudden, hello. You know, hey guys, remember me? I'm your brother.
You know what's funny though? So when we back on the road, we tour Live Nation as well. They do the tours. And it's when we got back on the road, it was interesting because it was split down. I mean, we had a lot of guys in the crew who were wearing 5-6 masks around. Then you have us who were just out.
I mean,
well,
I got COVID.
Yeah. So
right now,
I don't know if
now?
we want to talk about that.
Well, no, it's a crazy story. We had, you know, we've been in a band 29 years or whatever. And like I said, some of the crew guys, tour manager and stuff, you know, Kurt got COVID and we knew he did. And they made him take a test and he got COVID. And our tour manager at the time, who was kind of filling in for that tour, was like, well, okay, well, Kurt's got to go to the hotel and we're going to get him a van and we're going to bus him from Scranton to...
Well, at first they were going to cancel the show.
They were going to cancel the show, which... That's what our
good luck with that.
People were saying. That did not happen. Yeah, you know.
But luckily we had Jason, who's, you know, we had somebody in charge that wasn't going to go for that.
Well, and as long as you say 6 feet apart, it's impossible to get it. So,
yeah. But let me tell you
that's
this.
scientific.
It got really.
Let me tell you this. It was a major deal. It was a major deal, and it caused strife within the organization because I had COVID. But kind of back to our point before, like we're from the generation, right, that it doesn't matter what happens. You are playing the show. Mm-hmm. You don't get to say I'm sick.
Well, and then, or people for that matter, when you had COVID, their tour manager at the time is saying, well, Kurt can't ride the bus. Well,
until he goes.
I said, well, Kurt's riding the bus. So, you know.
No shit, really?
Yeah. I said, you don't have any say in the situation. It's a little bit different situation because we've, you know, the way it's set up for us. But he you know, they had, Kurt's going to ride the bus. What are you talking about? You know? Anyway, it was a big thing. We played the show. His tech's got 7 masks on and a hazmat suit, you know. And our front of house guy at the time, we had sound check on our front of house guy, you know, amphitheater, right?
Yeah.
You're 30 yards, double masked out there.
All by himself.
By himself.
Yeah, no.
But it was funny how, you know, to get back to your story and stuff, but it's funny how it split. How it was split down the middle.
Yeah.
And it got weird.
Crazy time.
It divided people.
It divided people, and it was really hard to work in the creative world because in the creative world, you had a lot of people who were really far left.
Yeah.
And then you had people over here, and it was,
But did you notice how so we start the tours back up, you know, a lot of people wanted the bands and crews to be vaccinated, but hey, the fans didn't have to be. You didn't maybe Foo Fighters did that for a little while where you had to show a card, but they quickly realized that, hold on, we're losing fans that way.
You put it on the crowd, bad for business.
Right. Bad for business, right? They'd say, oh, we're trying to protect the people. They're not trying to protect the people. They're trying to protect the money that's coming in.
No.
And let's just call it what it is, right? Because on stage, if you want to say that 6 feet apart is actually a thing, which we now know what it is or wasn't.
Dr. Fauci said.
But he did. He did.
Everyone would have just sat down.
Right. But the funny thing is like, yeah, God, we're on this huge stage. We're fine. But the crowd, who they didn't really care about if they're vaccinated or whatever, they're packed in there.
Oh, yeah.
No, they're out there.
But they need those
Make
tickets,
it make
man.
sense. Like there's a magic curtain between the.
I do have a COVID question for all you guys.
Okay. What is it?
This one still blows my mind. I need help. I'm asking for help. Back in the craziness, coffee shops opened up or whatever. So you can go.
Oh, it should.
You can go. You can take your mask off when you're eating.
Yeah.
Because that's when you spread the less
Because the
germs.
COVID doesn't.
It respects your meal.
Yeah, does it respect the meal?
Or on a plane.
It respects the beverage.
Seriously, you're right.
I just have a question. Like you could only have your mask off when you're eating. You could eat next to somebody with your mask off.
The airplanes is what was the funny one.
So the COVID doesn't go. It
and
respects
I just
the
ate
meal.
and drank the whole
But
time.
you stand up to go to the bathroom, though.
You know,
COVID
yeah,
can
always
follow
had
you. So
snacks.
you got to put it back.
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fauci's up there talking, or whoever, and we're all murderers. And meanwhile, behind him, there's 21 million illegals coming across the border, unvaxxed, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this?
Here's,
What is this
here's how
picture
much
here?
nonsense
Yeah.
the industry rules were. So since everyone is coming to me like a lighthouse and sharing their stories and their status and whatnot, a friend of mine was on one of the really big tours that finally from the fall of 21 went out, and he sent me the backstage protocol email that if you printed it, it would have looked like a phone book, right? And in here, it was very much like, all right, there's 4 bands on this bill. Each band is its own bubble inside, and no one from any band will interact with anyone, band or crew, with other bands. Inside your band bubble, there are sub bubbles: the stage right bubble, stage left, and these. So you had these 4 or 5 people that were in your bubble, and those were the only people.
Did they call it bubble?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Those are the
Punk
only
rock,
people
man.
you're allowed to interact with. You will all move together through the backstage areas, through the temperature checks, through and all of this
temperature checks.
nonsense.
In the
then
forehead.
and this guy's on the tour, and he goes, "Yeah, guess what happens when a crew guy, somebody tests positive for COVID." And I was like, well, certainly you put them in a hotel for 2 weeks and quarantine them. And he's like, yeah, no, we put them right on a plane and send them home, and we fly somebody else out.
Because they don't care about the people on the
No,
plane.
they don't care. It didn't matter. It was about turning the money faucet back on, and that's all that
Absolutely.
mattered. Me losing my gig, other people, losing their livelihoods. It was all it's nonsense.
But it's also a big power grab.
For sure.
So once you draw that line in the sand of like, if you don't wear the mask and you don't get quadruple vaxxed, then you don't care about anybody else.
Yeah,
and
yourself.
then it became political immediately, and it got really ugly.
Yeah.
I still will. The other day, driving Nashville, going to work, and I saw a lady in a car with a mask on, with both windows up. I'm like, it's over.
No, it's not.
It's
Well,
over.
no,
we've-
Take the mask
We've went through
off.
this before. The reason that happens is because there might be somebody at red light in front of that person, and
COVID comes
they
through
have
the
COVID
exhaust?
and their windows are down,
be.
and they cough, and then it goes in and it sucks it up through the heater of the AC.
Yep.
Flying COVID.
It's true.
You know.
Just ask John Legend,
So
Travis Kelsey.
And
Just ask them.
sitting down
It's
in the
a thing.
car, different than sitting down in a restaurant, and COVID knows the difference. So
Well,
right.
yeah, and they got
That's
into
right.
the whole
Actually,
essential business.
You said my favorite thing. COVID respects the meal.
yeah.
It does.
Well,
you
of
paid
course
a
it
lot of
does.
money for that meal.
Yeah.
yeah,
It doesn't want to infect. Get on that fork.
It's like, hey, I can be reasonable. Enjoy your meal. Have a good time.
I'm gonna wait
I'll
here.
wait outside. Yeah.
well,
As soon
like,
as you stand up, as soon as you stand up, I'm coming.
I can't.
and Neil, I don't even know if I told you this, but while we're at it, full disclosure, I did get the COVID shot, and I got the booster. I did it once.
Are you just
I know
telling
that.
Neil this for
You
the
know,
first
you
time?
I knew that.
You knew that. I guess.
Absolutely.
Okay. I didn't know if I told you. And the reason why is because you were talking about like fear, so they scare everybody. And there's 2 reasons. One, my mom, who was 75 at the time, was thinking, well, we go over there all the time and I'm traveling and stuff. I don't want to bring her something, and
Sure.
because you're watching all that. But then the other thing was the fear of losing income because we'll do corporate shows, just writer shows or whatever, and you fly and stuff. And I thought, well, what's going to happen is they're gonna say, hey, you can't fly, but then you have to have 2, and they're 28 days apart, and thinking, you're going to miss, several $1,000s, which could be, there was turning your lights on that month or whatever. So I went ahead and did it. And when you pulled in, it was at the Ag Center, like we're talking about here in Franklin, and it was military. They're all in military. They're dressed, and I thought, wow, I hadn't seen anybody in uniform since I was in uniform a long, long time ago. And you pulled in there, and it's like, and it was weird, but I had mixed feelings. Like when you got it in there, I was thinking to myself, man, what am I putting in here?
Yeah.
And but then at the same time, you called Mom after that, and I said, well, Mom, I got the poison racing through my veins for you. I love it.
I was going to ask, is that what this boil is?
You felt a little bit good. No, that's
Is that what the side effect is
rosacea.
here?
No, I've never thought bad about anybody that decided to get
That's the whole
vax.
point, though. Everybody
I never
should be able
did.
to make their own
I never
thing.
judged anybody about anything. I made my own decision, but I never judged any of my friends that got it because I knew the fear and I felt the fear. I just went the other way.
But that's the point, is that everybody should be able to make their own decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that was my point.
In the touring world, though, it was a
Well,
thing.
it was heavily pushed.
It was heavily pushed, and we're in a position.
You didn't know what to
like
believe.
like you, where it's
Right.
like,
Still.
look, if Jason gets COVID, the show's canceled.
Right.
We talk about being sick playing shows, the worst thing you can ever imagine as a player, because it's brutal. But we were like, okay, well, damn, we were kind of made to feel like, okay, not by anybody in our camp, but just the overall industry.
Well, yeah, because it's coming from
It's coming from the top.
I know.
So if one of us is COVID and we can't play, damn, that's kitty. What are we gonna do?
You're costing millions of dollars.
You're right. You're right.
And so it was a tough business to be in and navigate those waters. And you navigated
You're
it
right.
the right way. And I hate that you're treated that way, regardless of what their stance was. Because it's you do form.
I had an easy decision. It was like I write here.
Right. Yeah.
I come upstairs, and sometimes I tell people COVID was the best thing that ever happened to my writing career because I get to Zoom now.
There you go, right?
And I love that more.
I don't even have to have
still do
pants
it.
on.
I still exactly.
Yeah, Neil doesn't like to leave campus very often.
I still do it, but I totally get when you got the higher ups and you're dependent there, and somebody else is dependent on you, and
there's millions and millions and millions of dollars.
That's right.
Yeah.
Totally.
But again,
You were
I
brave.
wasn't
That was-
telling anybody what to do. It was just like, hey, here's why I'm not gonna, But a month into their tour, everyone's emailing me, hey, your band's all got COVID, and I was like,
Of course they do.
like I'm not there to blame,
Best ever.
But I'm just like, it's none of my business.
You didn't
Like,
text them back and go, I don't.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, I will say too, you're a really big man and a good man to not have, because you sit here and very politely tell this story that would, make a lot of people go over the edge. 14 years, with the band, people who loved you and you loved them and the families and everything, just to be dismissed like that, like we're expendable. And we all really, we are.
For sure, yeah.
It's just not, we know we're expendable. We just don't like it when it really happens.
Well, that was the thing. Like, I had haters coming at me online going, you're totally replaceable. I'm like, yeah, I know that.
Everybody is.
No one cares who's playing drums on Pretty Fly for a white guy. This is a low bar that we're crawling under here. But the point was, you just don't treat people like they're expendable garbage when the week before they were family and we're all in it together.
And they're so worried
Right.
about COVID, which is interesting because what they do is something far worse. By treating you the way they do, I'd be the same way. Like send you tremendous amount of anxiety about providing.
Yeah. Well,
that's a heavy thought to what do we do? How do I take care of my family?
Yeah, and that was the big part of all of it, because it was like I'm not just losing this job, I'm potentially unemployable to anyone else, because now I'm going to be the pariah poster child of the industry of like, don't be like that guy, you're going to ruin your life, right? And and it was but it was a very slow, long process of rebuilding, like trying to figure out like, okay, what can I do? And thankfully I had a studio in my home that we had put in when we moved here where I track drums for people. So then it was like, oh, okay, all of a sudden I've got people going, hey, can you play on my song? So that, that kept us
Is that
afloat.
how you started working after this?
That's what got me back to going. And again, at first I didn't want to even play drums. Like it just soured me on. I mean, the industry is the industry already. And then for this to happen, you're just like, what's the point? Why am I keep doing this? But I had a friend of mine who reached out to me and pretty early on. And he's like, hey, you playing drums? And I was like, no, I'm not playing drums. And he's like, that's what I thought. And he, lives up in Michigan. He's like, I'm going to come down with my guitar. I got some songs. We're going to, you can help me make my record. Right. And came down out of the goodness of his heart. And we, sat in the studio for a week and, put this record together, which was really fun. And he's like, now you're playing again. Now you're back up and running. And that really got me moving again. And the sad thing in all of it, when we're losing people who we had been close to, not just from Offspring people, but, other people I've known in the industry, some of them couldn't run away from me fast enough to not get any on them. Right. And, it was sad to be like, wow, these people that I've known forever are afraid to be seen with me in public, and they're kind of abandoning my family here. And here's all these strangers showing up going, what can we do? How can we help? What do you need? It was just really affirming of like, okay, it's not this. Yeah, there's an identity death here of I was the guy that played drums in this really big band. But it's like, that was something I did. That's not who I am. And it was a kind of having to reprogram my brain around like, all right, well, we're not doing that anymore. What's next? And, so I've been doing all kinds of different stuff for the last few years. Like it was very much a period of just saying yes to a lot of things. Like someone hit me up to write a theme song for a cartoon show. I was like, yes, I can do that. Yep, no problem. Never done that before. Let's go. And doing the drum tracks. And then that turned into making drum loop packs for a company called Splice. And, so I've been producing.
Yeah, we've probably used them.
Yeah, I have 4 different packs on there myself. But yeah, and I've just been able to do all of that myself out of my studio. And that all that stuff trickles down and leads you in different directions to where now I'm doing more like songwriting and composing. I'm composing the score for a documentary right now, and it's like all things that
That's
five
awesome.
years ago, wouldn't have been on my radar. But now it's like, oh no, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, let's.
God
I'm
works
interested
in
in that.
mysterious
I know, it's thinking the
ways.
same thing.
Amen.
So,
God works in mysterious ways.
Really, for me, and when my buddy came down and we, made his record to get me back on the drums, I hadn't realized how creatively stifled I was being in the band where I was fed the script and I played the script and, don't bring any of yourself here. Don't veer outside the color outside the lines. And it was like, cool, I can do that. But then you realize like, oh man, I missed creating. I missed feeling like I added something here. So it's been really fun to be doing drum tracks for so many different people. Cause I look at composing drum tracks the same as songwriting. Like, well, what can I do here that's going to elevate this part? What's going to make this song lift? And it's been really fun to get in there and kind of figure out what each song needs and what it doesn't, and like how can I convey the most amount of emotion with the least amount of information. And that's been a really fun way for me to find my way back to my creative spirit on top of everything else that we've gone through. So
That's incredible.
It
man.
really is.
that's really cool. And like looking back, and you've already kind of answered it because you probably do looking back, and though it's painful at the time and everything about it sucked, but then now you're talking about all the freedoms that you have. And do you think? And I'm glad that happened. Because now I have all the freedoms to do the stuff that you just talked about.
Yeah, I wouldn't characterize it as glad that it happened, but I am happy with where I'm at.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Like, I don't think any of that should have ever had to happen.
Right.
I should have been able to do my job. Other people should have been able to make different decisions about their own health and their own safety. And I understand that fear was a giant motivator for everyone. And nobody makes good decisions from a place of fear and anxiety. You just don't. And so I try to have a lot of grace for anyone for however they handled it. I think that my guys handled it poorly. I think I was treated poorly. Regardless of whether it was acting from fear or business or whatever.
What were the names of those guys?
Oh, we don't do that here, do we?
Offshoot.
Oh, yeah. And your Buffalo Bills are doing good, so you got to be in a good spot.
I'm excited for the Bills. I'm cautiously optimistic, like every year.
I don't know if you have to be cautiously. Well, okay.
Well, let's just hope it's not going down to a field goal.
Oh, God. He said it. He said it.
Let's just hope. I don't think it's good with Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen, man, it's hard to bet against Mahomes because he just finds a way to win.
Tully. Here goes Tully.
But I will say, this is a good shot.
No,
you got.
the Bills.
The Bills
look
are bad.
strong.
That's the best shot we've had in a long time.
Did you go to school with Dawson? Yep. She went to school with Dawson Knox.
Oh, nice.
Oh, you
yeah.
did?
Oh, yeah. Went to Brentwood Academy. Sure did.
That's right. I forgot he was from here.
Well, this has been a fun season for me because my youngest daughter has taken an interest in football, and I'm not the biggest football fan, but I've always support the Bills, and I've been, every year we show up.
Yeah, you show you're there.
Hold our breath. But she's really into football this year, and she has decided through the season she is on board with the Bills now. So she's
I don't
all
know if
about
you've seen it, and it's great. Well, you might not think it's great, but ESPN did a 30 for 30. I think it's the Four Falls of Buffalo.
Oh,
and
it's really good.
Obviously,
Okay.
the Super Bowl.
Have you seen it yet?
No,
It's
really good.
Really
search
well
it out.
done and
On
heartbreaking and inspiring and all
The
that.
Titans featured.
Hey, seriously, we can talk
You
to
notice
Pete.
how we went on? He just laughed and went on.
Well, because listen, we're like seriously over time, and we could talk to Pete for hours.
Oh, I could let him go.
I live up the road. I'll come back another time.
Hey,
You will?
Man.
be a guest host.
Be great.
It'd be amazing.
We're trying out for people on that side of the.
How they can find you, though.
I'll get a hat. What's that?
Tell people how they can find you. I know it's at Pete Parata on Instagram. Are you
Yeah,
on
at
X?
Pete Parata, Instagram and Twitter, X, whatever it's called. I don't have a Facebook. Someone on there has me as a Facebook. It's not me. I don't have Facebook. So
Okay.
I have a YouTube channel that's still the same, just at Pete Parata, and my website's peteparata.com. If you need drum tracks, send me a message
100%.
there. Check out my
You
splice
threw it out
packs, and
How do we find the splice packs? Seriously, is it just under Pete Parata?
Yeah, if you go into Splice in the search thing, if you search Pete Parata, because
Yeah.
my name's in each of the 4 packs. So there's 2 that are more like pop punk rock,
Yeah.
and then there's 2 that are pop rock and that kind of thing. And with all the single hits, the snares, and like my whole
Tully and I know,
library and
yeah.
everything.
I need to introduce him to Pat, my cousin Pat.
Yeah, you do.
Thrasher.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
And as long as we're plugging Pete, let's plug ourselves, right? If you're watching us on YouTube, you got to subscribe, you got to download, you got to like, leave us a comment. Like this is going to be a polarizing episode probably, and that's good. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. We want to interact with you guys. Follow us at Try That Podcast on all the socials, right, Allie? All the socials. We are rocking.
Yeah,
we're verified, baby.
Thanks, Allie.
Pete, we can't tell you much. We appreciate
Thank
you
you,
being
Pete.
here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate
Great
it.
to meet y'all.
Absolutely. This is Try That in Small Town Podcast. Thanks, guys.
Make sure to follow along, subscribe, share, rate the show, and check out our merch at trythatinasmalltown.com.